We Make Movies Film Geeks podcast, episode number 76.
Welcome to the We Make Movies podcast, making the world a better place, one film at a time. And now, here are your hosts, otherwise known as the director, the actress, and who the hell is that guy? Chad, Michelle, and Garrett.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another We Make Movies Film Geeks podcast, the podcast that's all about how to get your movie made, how to get it seen by other people, and how to get it awesome. The introduction, a little bit of a lie today. I'm your host, Garrett Robinson. With me, as always, faithful co-host Chad Kukahiko. Michelle can't be with us today. She is actually, and you're not going to believe how selfish this is. She's on set filming right now. Can you believe her going out and doing the thing that is the entire point of this podcast? How dare she?
How dare she?
Not just.
I say good day.
It's.
I said good day.
I said good day, sir.
Good day, sir.
No, well done to her. She's out there on set filming away. So it's just the two of us today. So the show's going to be a little bit shorter than when it's all three of us. But we promise it'll be just as good. And I will be doing the giggling. Yeah, I will be doing the giggling sex jokes in Michelle's place.
So excited about that. Can't wait.
Oh my God! Right? That's what she said. So in addition, I don't know. In addition, I totally took a cue from Michelle and also Chad last week, and brought alcohol this time. But now Michelle's not here to chug a wine bottle with us.
I don't have any left.
Oh well, I'm just gonna.
There's cider in the front. Maybe I should go get some cider. Maybe
do it after the first segment.
I love
because we have a lot. It's interesting. I'm just looking over because for the audience, we always write our segments in advance. Sometimes only a little bit in advance, but we always write them in advance, and then we organize them. And we have a lot to talk about box office. A lot to talk about box office this week. But we actually are starting out with something that is a little bit different and I think a little bit more important. Chad, you want to fill us in with what's going on?
So jury selection is about to begin. I think it begins on Monday, actually, on a trial that really blew up the independent film production world about a year ago. And I'm, of course, talking about the involuntary manslaughter charges that were levied against the producers of the Allman Brothers biopic Midnight Runner from last year. If you don't recall what I'm talking about, this is the incident on the train tracks in Georgia in which AC Sarah Jones was killed. And we reported months ago when the prosecutor out that way basically accused officially the three producers and the AD on that film of involuntary manslaughter. Those producers are Randall Miller, Jody Savin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Jay Cedrish, again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name, and the AD is Hillary Schwartz, though Hillary is actually being tried separately from the producers and might even be called as a witness on the producers' trial, which is apparently happening first. Georgia state law basically says that a person can be accused of involuntary manslaughter if, somebody dies while that person is committing a misdemeanor, and the misdemeanor in this case is trespassing, because the train company who owned those train tracks said they never ever gave the production permission to use the train tracks. So the production, led of course by its producers and its AD, were therefore trespassing on the train tracks where Sarah Jones was killed. It's a really important case for the well-being of independent filmmakers today. Its implications are actually really quite huge. I mean, since the incident occurred, filmmakers at all levels are reflecting on some of their own experiences, and they're basically saying that they've been put into very dangerous circumstances, and producers, don't really seem to care. A bunch of us, We Make Movies people, actually shot a short film last year in the midst of a sandstorm, and I was actually first AD on that shoot, and I feel actually, honestly, like in hindsight, I feel bad that I let it continue. I mean, I kind of left it up to the producers and the director, but I probably, as first AD, I feel like I should have shut that down. I mean, it all worked out okay. Everybody survived. The camera had a lot of issues with it, and we ended up getting some footage. But I think that if I had it to do over again in light of what is going on with the Sarah Jones, I would definitely not do it the same way. And I did eventually help convince the director to shut down the second day of shooting, which apparently was supposed to have even worse winds, and it did, according to the weather reports. But again, I can say without any shadow of a doubt that if I'm ever in the same situation, I'm going to shut it down, or just walk away myself and tell other people to do the same. So now what's interesting is in this particular case, there are some law experts that some reporters have been talking to, and they think that the prosecutors are going to have a really difficult time making their case against the producers of Midnight Runner. But regardless, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, producers shouldn't be careful about hurting, their employees based on whether or not they can be prosecuted. They should base it more on the fact that they could actually cause somebody to get hurt, and that is, to me, a little too far. So I hope that other producers, other producer types, ADs, will follow suit and take this seriously.
Yeah, and it's a really weird. Sometimes it's a very weird line to ride. Like, I could see how being out in the middle of like a sandstorm, there's definitely opportunities for people to get hurt and ways that could happen. But I feel like that's a little bit more of a thin line, as opposed to if you are shooting on train tracks when you don't have permits and the train has not been shut down, and you're not only doing it on train tracks, but you're doing it on train tracks on a bridge where the bridge is the train track. So if a train does come, if you're on train tracks like in the middle of the country, you see a train coming, you just step off the tracks and move a few feet away, and you're fine. It's like that is such clear and present thing, and so
what's interesting here is in this case is the producer is like, hey, I was on those tracks too. Do you think I would have put myself in harm's way? And it's like, what's interesting to me is I'm obviously not a lawyer, so to me it seems like if I were on that jury, it would seem kind of open and shut. Like, the producers put those people in that situation. The producers are the ones who, so to me it seems pretty open and shut. Obviously, again, I'm not a lawyer, but we'll see. I mean, anything can happen, even if you state the law as such. A jury can still convict. They still can agree. So, but we'll see. It's gonna be interesting. We'll definitely keep all you guys up to date on it. We'll let you know what happens as it's happening. So
yeah, and I certainly do hope that this is a wake up call for a bunch of people. To don't do stupid shit.
Yeah, right.
Let's get on to our talk about films and the box office. I hear a lot of talk these days about the subject of rated R fatigue, which is sort of this idea that there's so many rated R movies coming out these days that people are starting to get weary of them. 8 rated R films have already been released this year, and only 2 of them have been what anyone could call like very successful. Unfortunately, one of those was 50 Shades of Grey, which kind of sucks. But on the whole subject of rated R fatigue, I kind of agree and disagree. I am personally a little sick of putting out gritty, edgy films and TV shows just for the sake of being gritty and edgy, because that's what audiences want these days. I think that's kind of BS. And it's fairly easy for me to tell when something is just being gritty for the sake of being gritty rather than for the purposes of telling their story. Like, if you have to tell a story and it's an intense story, then yeah. But if you're like, all right, we want to tell a typical, father-son bonding tale, but they both happen to be involved in the international drug trade and a prostitution ring, it's like, okay.
Did that run all night?
I don't know.
Oh.
I actually don't know anything about Run All Night. But I also think that we can't just blame poor box office numbers on a rating, and it ties into the same idea. A good film is a good film regardless of its rating or what age range can easily go and see it without their parents having to accompany them. And like that fact to me is only proven more with each new, R-rated box office record that gets broken. Like when Ted became, the story about the teddy bear and whatever, that became the highest grossing R-rated comedy of all time. So it's not that an R rating means a death knell for your film, and it's not that an R rating is going to do poorly because there's so many R-rated films out there. Maybe if your film doesn't do too well, you should just look at the quality of your film and the story you're telling before you go on the assumption that, like, well, people are just tired of seeing adult stories because there are too many of them. That might be true. If you are the only R-rated film to come out in the last 6 months, you're likely providing a certain type of entertainment that your audience hasn't had very much of for a while. But if your film fails in the middle of so many other R-rated films that are doing pretty well for themselves, the problem might just be that you made a bad movie. You know what I mean? I think that an R rating will help your film if you're the only R-rated film to come out in a while. But if you are in a big pack of R-rated films and you do poorly, it's probably because of your film. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, but I'm just curious. I'm totally fixated on this. What was the other film other than 50 Shades of Grey that's done?
I can't remember. What
was it Kingsman or was it
Kingsman? Kingsman did all right.
Kingsman, yeah. I just saw that last night.
And that was R-rated. I thought, from the trailer, I thought that Kingsman would have been a PG-13 film. It didn't seem R-rated, but obviously, I haven't seen it.
You'll see. I mean,
really?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it, and I think, but I was glad that somebody. There's a really crass joke near the end that's just unnecessary, and I'm actually really glad that somebody warned me about it, because I think if I had seen it without knowing that it was going to be there, I would have been like, "Oh, come on!"
Was it the thing we talked about on the show?
I don't know. Maybe I don't remember where I heard it.
We talked about it, so I'll say it now. And spoiler alert, but you should have heard this last week, where Obama's head gets blown up.
No.
Okay.
It's just a crass sexual joke.
Got it.
It's made, and I think that probably one of the biggest issues with it, and it comes from a character who's really kind of set up as like one of the very few serious, sympathetic characters in the film. You know what I mean? And that's what's so weird about it. It's just like, and I think that it's, whatever they did, whatever the reasoning was behind it, I don't think it ruins the film. But it definitely, and then later when they kind of show, which is completely unnecessary, on top of it, it's an eye roller, you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's near the end, and it's the kind of thing that it's just like, why would you do that? Well, it's just completely unnecessary.
You were so close. You were so close.
I still enjoyed it, but I'm glad that I was warned about that. Because
I'll probably be glad too now when I see it.
Yeah, I tend to not. It's not a real spoiler. It's just like one of these things. It's like, it's a great film, but there's one part that's just really crass and unnecessary. So anyway, be aware.
Interesting.
Of it. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about box offices in another area of the world.
Yes. So CNN reported that this week that during February, China box office brought in more money than U.S. box offices, and this is the first time that apparently has ever happened. It's not necessarily excellent news for independent for U.S. filmmakers. I mean, because apparently China only allows in 34 foreign feature films each year, and then they tend to censor the crap out of them.
Really?
Well. Yes. But it is interesting, and it does demonstrate the growth of that market, because that's, I mean, if you think about that's the case with box office with film in China. You got to know that it's going in a lot of other ways, and it makes me think about, well, for instance, TV. But it makes me think about that article that we talked about a few months ago, where somebody basically reviewed Marco Polo, but they did more than review Marco Polo. They also talked, like, the whole first half of this article. I can't remember what it was on, but it was on, I spoke about this a while ago.
Right.
Was all about why Netflix would do that. Why Netflix would spend, $20 million, or I don't know, maybe it was closer to 90 or 9, I don't know. A lot of money, lot of monies on a thing that's actually really quite bad. I mean, the dialogue apparently is awful and blah blah blah. Because the second half of the article was, they shredded it. But the first part, they talked about what they were doing, that they're basically trying to get all the Asian money, that they're trying to break into Asia and they want all the money. And it's stuff like this that demonstrates the actual capacity for that part of the world. I mean, if you think about it, if it's happened now, and yes, it was a big weekend. It was like a month. It was apparently like the Chinese New Year is always a big movie going weekend. But the fact is that at a certain point, within a number of years, it's entirely possible that China will just regularly, beat the crap out of American box office money. And when that day happens, that's going to be really, really interesting. You know what I mean? I mean, like, what is that going to mean? Is that going to mean that movies like Transformers are going to repeatedly, because even if you
God help us all.
even if you only get 2 or 3 films in that market, if they can consistently bring in a lot more money than they in China than they bring in the U.S., then it's entirely possible that they're going to just make films for that market, and that's going to get really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I could foresee a future where where basically Hollywood moves more towards like a let's make films that will sell well in China, because you see that in other countries where it's like, let's do films that will do okay here, but will also do well in America.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also people in France who make films that are specifically for France and never really get picked up in America, and those filmmakers are doing all right. They're not multi-billionaires and whatever the fuck, but they are making a living making the films that they want to make that are fairly well in their country. So that's, if anything, I think that's like where things would end up, where it's like maybe Hollywood starts making only Transformers type movies that will do really well in China, but if you're smart and savvy, you can still be an indie filmmaker in America that just makes more American films, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, what's interesting though, as you were talking about that, it dawned on me that American markets and Chinese markets are actually, they have more in common than American markets and European markets, because a lot of really good European films are actually funded by the government or by various governments coming together. Like, that's really interesting. It's a very different model. So a lot of the people that are surviving filmmakers in some of these other countries, especially in Europe, they're doing it. They're not as driven by the market in the same way that the U.S. and China is.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Let's talk about, speaking of foreign films trying to do well in America and not necessarily succeeding. Chappie came out on Friday. You know Chappie. It's not technically a foreign film, whatever, but it's
South African.
Yeah, made by Neil Blomkamp, who's from South Africa. So far, it's been disappointing in the box office numbers.
15% on Rotten Tomatoes too.
Really no, from critics.
From critics, and I don't think it's a whole lot better from audience.
Oh, that's terrible. And it's made 13. They're predicting that by the end of the weekend, it's going to be 13.3 million, which
it's gone up to 29%. It was worse before.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but it's at 67 with people, so that's not bad.
Okay, so that might not be bad. Yeah. But for an opening box office, at least in America, Neil Blomkamp, of course, this is his third feature film. His first one was District 9, which I loved, along with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. His second film was Elysium, which was meh. But District 9 debuted at $37.4 million. Elysium debuted at $29.8 million, which is down. And then this one is $13 million, which is down again. So, if you're a filmmaker, that's just a really unfortunate trend, And Elysium ended up doing not too bad internationally, but, it's still yeah. What I do really like about Blomkamp is that he only has done so far original science fiction plots that are original. He writes them, It's not based. He doesn't do adaptations, and he also definitely has a very specific developed aesthetic. whether it's South Africans integrated with aliens, or it's advanced technology in humanity's future, or now with Chappie, who's a police robot, the robotics and everything has this definite sort of dirty, cobbled together aesthetic that I actually kind of like. I do appreciate that. And he also very definitely has an agenda with all of his stories, which isn't a bad thing in itself. But I thought that District 9 was a great movie in itself and as a statement on apartheid, and I thought Elysium was like just too heavy-handed with the message, and just it just didn't really do it for me. It left too many plot holes open, even for a sci-fi geek like me to just wave off. Films can be a great way to get across a message, don't get me wrong, but like less is usually more, and like a subtle approach works better than just screaming income inequality is bad for 2 straight hours, which is what I felt like Elysium was. So I am still interested in seeing Chappie, especially after hearing that it's got 67% or 66% from audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. But if the message is more important than the filmmaking, I'm probably going to have the same reaction as the box office, which is sort of
Yeah. Yeah, I bought tickets to it on Saturday, and then when I saw how poorly it was doing on Rotten Tomatoes, I had them switch the tickets to Kingsman. That's why we saw Kingsman.
Really? Oh my gosh, that's not
because
good.
I've been looking forward to it. I'm actually a big fan of Neil Blomkamp, and I love Die Antwoord too. Like, I don't know if you know that crazy ass South African rap group. It's just this dude, and they're insane.
No.
And they star in the movie as well. So, what I'm
They're in Chappie?
Yes, they're in Chappie as well.
What? I want to see it.
Yes, and that's the thing, is that they are apparently like sort of thematically, tonally very, like, that's the thing that I'm seeing from some of the critics, is that he just couldn't get that. I think a friend of mine sent a link to me on Friday about an article that Neil Blomkamp put out. It is basically like apologizing for the film, and it's like, it's the opening weekend, dude. Why would you do that? I mean,
Wow. No, that's bad.
Yeah, it's bad news, and it's. I don't know.
Another problem that I think this film might have had is, I don't know what you thought when I saw the trailer, but I was like, wow, wondrous mystery, a robot who takes on human feelings. It's not an original storyline, but it's a good storyline. I like it. It's cool. Like this would, and he's so cute. I bet my kids are going to want to have Chappie toys. The film's rated R. We were just talking about this. It's why is it rated R? I'm definitely not going to take my kids to see it now.
Right.
Maybe if they were a little bit older, but my oldest child is 5. Like, I thought the marketing was weird.
How did you have
R-rated
20 kids when the oldest one is 5? How did you
Lots
figure
of
that out?
twins and triplets. Lots of twins and triplets.
That's amazing. That's my joke. If you've never heard me make that joke before, is that Garrett has
I have 20 kids.
the number of kids that Garrett has is constantly increasing at sort of an exponential rate. He's like basically a rabbit in my.
Every time I see Chad, I actually have a couple more kids.
I think I'm probably impregnating you. Yeah, I'm really bummed. I wish it came out better. And I think that what's interesting, though, is that article, he basically said, and I don't know if this is an exact quote, I'm just like, I was so disappointed I couldn't even read the full article. I just saw like a pull quote that said something like, maybe I'm not a director after all.
What?
Something like that. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think that I enjoyed District 9. I think perhaps he's the kind of auteur, rather, since he's a writer-director, that really needs good guidance. He needs a producer, and I have a feeling that Peter Jackson, I know Peter Jackson had something to do with District 9.
He saw his, I think he'd shot like some scenes or whatever, and he saw his videos, and he saw his short films, and he heard about his concept for the film, so he actually produced it.
Yeah, and so I think that he just is the kind of director, auteur, again, that needs a good producer, that's a good story producer, a good creative producer. So I hope he doesn't like give up entirely. I mean, especially like that lead actor that he has. By the way, sort of semi-side note, but not really. As I was looking at Rotten Tomatoes, a banner pops up about a show that is made and produced and viewed on PlayStation about superheroes. It's called Powers. That's freaking fascinating. I'm going to look more into that, but I mean that's crazy. I just saw, yeah, it premieres Tuesday apparently. So I don't have a PlayStation. I don't have a console at all. But I'm really interested in seeing this thing. I hope it's not a turd. But
I'm seeing it too. It's from the studio that brought you Breaking Bad. Very interesting.
And the lead actor looks like the one who did the voice of Chappie, who was also the main bad guy in Elysium, was also the main good guy in District 9, which is a really, really interesting actor. But anyway, yeah, that's
cool.
Total sort of semi-side note. But anyway, do you mind if I move on to...
Yeah, do it.
If you like Cary Fukunaga, who did True Detective, he's done some feature films too that are really amazing. I can't remember the name of the one that it had a kid that was basically traveling up to the States, trying to get into the States from South America, and he was basically on the run from this gang because he ended up... and I'm not really... It's not much of a spoiler to tell you he kills the head of the gang. It's in all the previews, and it happens very early in the film. And then he's on the run from these guys, and it is dark. It's a dark film. It's a really good film. Very, very, very tonally similar to True Detective. He's an excellent, excellent filmmaker, Cary Fukunaga. Anyway, Netflix paid $12 million for the worldwide distribution rights of Cary Fukunaga's newest feature, which is called Beasts of No Nation, starring Idris Elba, about a young West African child who's conscripted to fight with a group of ruthless mercenary fighters. Idris Elba plays the ruthless leader of that group.
God, he's so damn good.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm assuming that this is exclusive distribution if they paid that much for it, right?
Well, that's the thing, is they're actually doing what is called day and date release. So they're trying to partner up with different theater companies. It's theater. Well, let me just finish it, and I'll get to it. So they're sending it out to these different theater distribution houses, theater houses, to see if they'll do it, and they're not getting any love.
Wow.
As we've been writing since the very beginning of this podcast, it's becoming a more common occurrence for films to hit both the theaters and online at the same time. Radius TWC, which is the Weinstein Company's like little boutique side agency, distribution company rather, they've been doing it since the very beginning, and they've and so that's what Netflix is obviously going to be doing with this. They're also, I believe, once the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon sequel is basically ready to go, they're going to be trying to do the same thing. But they're not getting much love. AMC, Regal, Cinemark, and some other chain called Carmike, which I imagine is in a different part of the country, they're all refusing to screen Beasts of No Nation. NPR did a report on this yesterday. They interviewed a man who owns a small independent chain. I think they own like 19 different theaters in Texas and New York, and I believe they have some branches scheduled to open in California. They're called Alamo Draft House, and they're fine with this style. They're gonna totally partner with Netflix. And like I said, the strategy is called day and date. It seems to me a little bit Luddite for these, AMC, these big houses, to keep trying to, Radius has been doing this for 6 years now, and it seems, and especially last year when you look at the success of, what was the name of that film, Snowpiercer, which of course you'll make your silly, sophomoric jokes about. Yes, exactly. So I think it's silly for these houses, and I'm fairly certain it's going to eventually become too commonplace for them to continue to refuse, because they're basically just throwing money away. I mean, they're just like, you kids get off my lawn. You can only do that so much before it's costing you money. And obviously these guys are in business to make money. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of Fukunaga, so I'm definitely going to see his film. I don't know if I'll see it in the theaters or I'll see it at home. I don't know. But
well, I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that so let's take the first film that I can think of that released in theaters and digital on the same day, Veronica Mars, released in theaters. Not every theater, but theaters. It was in AMC. It was in, Pacific. And but when it released, it was available on YouTube, Netflix, iTunes, Amazon had it. We watched it on Amazon. And I'm wondering if this one might be different. It might be different just because they don't know if the audience is there, but it might also be different if Netflix is the only online distributor because theaters might not want Netflix to be too powerful.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah,
because
no,
it's
interesting. I mean, there must be some kind of factor
right.
like that in there. I don't know how much of that plays, but I'm sure there's something about it. Or it's even possible that they're getting pressure from some of the people that they work from the other companies
right.
work with, some of the competitors to Netflix to, who knows. But that's an interesting point. I mean, I think that however whatever the reason is, eventually it's going to die away. Eventually that kind of thinking is going to become a thing of the past.
Right.
Indie houses I think by and large, people go to movie theaters to kind of escape and to see the spectacle, to
right.
be part of the, when I was at the screening last night, the Kingsman screening, it was packed. The theater was packed. It was ArcLight, $16 tickets, and it's like, people everywhere. But
yeah.
And part of that is the draw, being amongst other people, hearing them laugh, feeling your part. There's something to that still. Indie house films, I don't know if that's so necessary so much. I don't know if it's, Indie house films can be a more personal kind of thing. It can be the
right.
kind of thing that you experience just one-on-one. Because I don't know, there's something a little bit more. So I don't know. I mean, that's just, those are my thoughts. So I'm not sure. I'm sure obviously some people love to go out and see those films in the film houses, or else they wouldn't exist at all.
Right.
So it seems to me smarter from a business standpoint to try to want to appeal to both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting thing, and I think you're 100% right in that. The theaters won't be able to resist it forever. It's like if you want any piece of the pie, you're gonna have to play ball with online. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll wrap up with my segment. Yesterday was my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a good time. Had a good time, spent it with the family. Watched Star Wars with my children for the first time. They'd never seen it before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we watched episode 4. Desmond is just turned 1, so he wasn't that interested. But ever since then, Dawn and Luke have been running around with their toy lightsabers that I got them a while ago, and they didn't really.
I was 5 in 1977 when that film came out, and I saw it in the theaters, and it was the perfect age. I mean, it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So, but last night I went on a date with my wife, and at night we watched Mockingjay. Because we hadn't got to see it in theaters, so that's the latest Hunger Games movie for anybody who doesn't know the title offhand. I really liked it. I really liked and just sort of appreciated it, and I had heard quite some criticism of it, and most of the criticism leveled at the movie, whether it's from people that I knew or online reviews, the guys who do the CinemaSins, the guys who do everything wrong with blah blah movie. Most people say, oh, it's too slow, and there's so much of the movie that's quiet or like going through Katniss drama, and the characters doing something that's like not like directly related to the plot. I didn't mind any of that. I didn't mind it at all. In general, that raised and raises an interesting point for me on slower films, and especially slower films that are adapted from books and how that relates. First of all, you just got to get this out of the way. People are going to complain about films no matter what.
Especially when your job is to complain about films. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Everything wrong with X, that's what you do. Of course you're
right. And there are certain people, like I have certain friends that no matter what, I have never heard about a movie from them without hearing them complain about it. That is all they do. It's like, dude, why aren't you a professional movie critic? Because you have the movie critic mindset. You never talk about a film unless you're talking about what's wrong with it. Like, you can never just go, I really liked it. Oh, really? Should I watch it? Yes. Like, it's anyway. Michael Bay movies get slammed.
You need to stop talking to those people about movies.
I know. Well, I don't. Like, I don't anymore. Like, if they say, dude, guess what I saw this weekend? I try to change the subject. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to hear, because I know you're just going to talk about how bad it is, you know? And God, I never want them to watch one of my movies. Fuck.
Did they make movies?
Some of them do, yes. In fact, the people that I'm referring to are the people that I can think of off the top of my head are We Make Movies people, which, you know, whatever. Yeah. To each their own. But you know, Michael Bay movies get slammed because they're too big and explodey, because they don't develop good characters and they have dialogue that's just super cringeworthy. So if Hunger Games went more like that and was more it's like if Hunger Games was more like action-packed and had explosions and no scenes that weren't directly related to the plot, then of course they'd get criticized for that too. But people talk a lot about the difference between books and films. And my opinion, which I've said on the show before, is that I think books can have, and like in general, really good books have a deeper and more profound effect on the audience in general, and movies have more volume to their effects. By which I mean things like movies can make me cry or get my heart racing or get me excited or like thrilled much easier than books. That medium is more conducive to an immediate impact that hits you very hard, whereas books usually have effects that like stick with me for a long, long time. And of course there's exceptions to every rule. I have movies that have affected me deeply for long periods of time, and books that have like hit me really hard while I was reading them. And of course, time you spend with the work is a factor. A movie is only a couple of hours to get through, whereas you generally read a book anywhere between 8 and 20 hours. So I just don't think that it's right to criticize a movie that moves slowly just because it moves slowly. You know, I felt like Mockingjay spent a lot of time thrusting us into the characters' heads and like get us to feel a lot more about the actors on the screen. And what actors? I mean, you've got fucking Julianne Moore, Jennifer Lawrence, who's just she's incredible. I really love her as an actor. I've never seen her in something where I was like, she is doing a bad job. I've seen her in movies I didn't like, but never because of her. You got it was Philip Seymour Hoffman's like one of the last things he filmed.
One of the last pieces, yeah.
Yeah.
Although he wasn't finished when he passed, but.
Sorry, yeah. So, and speaking of which, kudos to the filmmakers. Like, I couldn't tell what was missing from him. You know what I mean? Like,
I assume it's going to be much more in the second film.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm wrong, but I assume he got most of that film. You know what I mean? Most of it.
Exactly.
Regardless, you know, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it was pretty seamless.
Yeah, so for me, the character work and the dialogue and the world building were awesome. And if that's in a film, I'm totally fine if it takes time, not overloading us with action and you know, plot and oh my god, now this new thing, and just really works on trying to get into your head. And I don't think any of us would enjoy a world where all of the films were 90-minute races to the most shocking conclusion they could possibly come up with. So,
yeah. I think, I mean, to some degree, I think what you're talking about is sort of the difference between what I call like the SVU world and the Wire world. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You watch, you know, basically in sort of at a sort of macro level, what happens over an entire season in The Wire is equal to what happens in a single episode of SVU, because it's so glib. Yeah. And it's so filled with like it's gotta happen fast and blah 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 that they like every episode has to have its own, and it's not really like some people. There's going to be people that are going to appreciate The Wire, and then there's going to be people who appreciate SVU. They want to just kind of zone out and just kind of drone on and not really get involved in something. But when you can dig into details, I saw Mockingjay in the theaters, but I've read the books, so to me it was eventful, and it was, you know, regardless of its pace, everything. There's a depth to it. I can't really be sort of objective, to be completely honest, about a film that I watch when I've read the book of it too.
Yeah, and really enjoyed it, which I did as well. Like, the book's great. So
yeah.
And that's another thing to remember, dude. The filmmakers, they're making the film for fans of the book, because more people have read that book, than exist in America. So it's like huge international fandom, all that sort of stuff. So there are things that, anyway, I think it was a really, really good job, a good showing, and well done. If somebody hasn't watched it, I would recommend it.
Kudos.
Kudos.
I would also recommend the books. I mean, the books are fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Not if you don't like really, really dark things.
It is dark. It is dark.
Like Megan was Megan was talking to me, and she was like, "Okay, I want you to spoil some things for me." And I was like, "I don't want to spoil things." She was like, "No, I want to know." And so she started asking me things about the ending of the book. She was like, "I feel like this is going to happen." And I was like, "Mm-hmm." She was like, "God damn it, damn it."
Yeah.
And can we just take a moment to appreciate how much better all of the Hunger Games is than Divergent? Books, films, everything.
My God. I
don't
could
care.
not even get through the third book. I mean, I could not even. I tried. I got like 3 chapters in, and then I was. Yeah, exactly. It was just so bad, so bad. Anyway.
All right. Well, let's end off. Yes. Let's end off with things to know. Thing to know.
Before things to know, we generally do community news. So.
Oh, we do have community news,
yes.
Right? First of all, we would appreciate it if you would go and rate the show on iTunes. That is always very helpful to us. Just pop in there, leave a rating, leave a review if you want. It helps people, new people, find the show, et cetera, et cetera. So whether you're a live watcher on YouTube, thank you very much for that, or whether you listen to us on the audio feed, please do pop in on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating if you haven't already. This week is Improv Night. That is the event we're holding where it's improv. It's great for actors to practice your skills. And are we still doing the thing where you can submit a scene and have actors improv their way through it?
I believe so, but that's definitely a question for Chris. If you have any questions about Improv Night, you can just show up or email improv@wemakemovies.org. And if you are interested, a couple people have reached out to me on Facebook and via email. If you are interested in participating, just email improv@wemakemovies.org, and Chris will put you on the list.
Unfortunately, Chad and I are like the worst people to talk about improv, because that's like one of the very few events that we rarely go to because it's not like our style. But I know many producers, writers, directors in the show who get a lot of benefit out of it. In fact, I went to the writers' workshop this week, and Beardsley's piece was up, and that was pretty good. And I found out afterwards that was a piece that he submitted to improv first, and the actors did their thing with it, and then that helped him revise it and actually come up with the piece. So if you do like developing your work with actors, improving their way through it, it's a great place to go.
Or if you're stuck, if you feel stuck at a certain stage, it's also something you can just throw some words into some actors, and just see what they say, see what these characters say,
Exactly.
I don't think I said that right, but I think you get my point.
I got the point. And then finally, We Make Movies is, as always, brought to you by you. We're a film community that is supported entirely by the community itself, and we do that via the platform Patreon. I'm getting so good at this now.
So good.
Look at me. Good. Patreon is a voluntary subscription program where you can elect to give a certain amount per month to support the community. It's like Kickstarter, except it happens every single month. And every community activity, all of the events and everything is paid for by the community, and extra money goes into a production fund that is actually going into producing projects by the community. And there was an announcement last week that we are going to be doing a poll soon to figure out what is the first project that is going to be funded by the Patreon account. So if you want to be involved in the poll, and if you do want to support our filmmaking activities, go to patreon.com/wemakemovies or wemakemovies.org/Patreon. Either one works, and Patreon is Patreon, and check it out. That is how we're able to keep doing what we do.
One last thing on that too is that as of the past couple months, every dollar that we raise, 70 cents from every single dollar goes directly into that rolling production fund.
Really?
So, yes.
We're doing great.
Yes. So keep that in mind. If you start to give, basically, if you become a member at this point, if you become a regular, 70% of every dollar you give is going to go directly into the rolling production fund.
That's pretty awesome. And mark my words, people, we're going to start producing feature films with this. Like, it's not going to be that long before the group starts actually doing this. So get in on the ground floor. Just telling you now.
That's right.
And finally, we will end off with things to know. My thing to know is that this week, next Saturday, actually, I am starting a new online show with two of my co-hosts from my other podcast, the Storytelling Podcast. We are going to be starting a weekly gaming show, and of course, you've heard me talk about it a lot, so you shouldn't be surprised. It's going to be happening on Twitch. So if you want to follow that show, go to twitch.tv/ bear with me, Fortinbuff, which is my gamer name, okay? Just like, try to withhold your laughter, Chad. It's spelled Fort in buff, like 3 separate words, but it's all one word. And we'll be doing that. Name to be determined. We'll definitely have it figured out by Saturday.
Excellent. Wonderful. So my thing to know is actually something I have not seen yet, but I'm really excited to see it. It's Netflix's new show, the one that they bought 2 seasons right away from Tina Fey, called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I have friends who are already binge watching it and saying it's hilarious.
Great.
So if you were, you're watching it. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
If you were a fan of 30 Rock, you will probably love this. I can't wait to start watching it. I just honestly, I tend to wait till the last second because I'm afraid that I'm just going to end up not leaving my room. I'm just going to start. I'm a binge watcher, so it's hard for me to turn away from something. So
it's great. It's funny. It's the only criticism I've heard about it is that it's over the top, and in my opinion, it uses its over the topness to point out the ridiculousness of typical sitcoms. You know what I mean? Like it's very tongue-in-cheek. Like, I feel like sitcoms go over the top and try to pretend that they're not doing that, and this is just like balls out like, hey, check us out. We're freaking amazing and awesome. So highly recommended.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All
right, that's it for this week's episode of We Make Movies. If you are one of the people who only comes here to see Michelle, we do apologize. We promise she'll be back next week. I've been Garrett Robinson. You can find me at garrettbrobinson.com. Chad is at superfreako.com. And we'll see y'all next Sunday, everybody. Goodbye.